Peter Parker has enlisted some superhero friends to help protect the people he loves. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is an I Review, a show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you should go back to the comic book shop for or not. Make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. The book that I want to talk about right now is Amazing Spider-Man number 799, which is part 3 of the Going Down Swinging storyline, which is Dan Slott's last arc. It's dealing with the Red Goblin, Norman Osborn, and it seems like Peter Parker is kind of going back on his deal, but not quite yet. He's leading some friends into the fire, but let's see how hot it gets for him. Here we are in the aftermath of Amazing Spider-Man 798. The Red Goblin revealed Norman Osborn holding this power in his hands. And now we open up with a different situation because Peter Parker essentially surrendered the Spider-Man mantle in the last issue, and now he has to rely on his friends. So we've got the Human Torch patrolling around Mary Jane. We've got Miles Morales watching Aunt May. You've got Silk, who's taking a look at everybody at the Daily Bugle, and Peter is the commander of this one. He's the oracle to everyone else, trying to control this, and he's coming from the Oscorp building, the last place that the Green Goblin, the Red Goblin now, would ever seem to be. And of course, he needs a little bit more help. So what he does is he calls on a new friend, or an old friend if you look at it that way, and that is Anti-Venom Flash Thompson. So even though Flash already knew what was going to be happening because he rescued J. Jonah Jameson from the Green Goblin, the Red Goblin at this point in time, he is still part of this team. And then of course, Spider-Man, knowing he has an ally in Clayton Cole, aka Clash, he contacts him as well because his sonic abilities are going to be a big help when it comes to fighting symbiotes. What we find is that we flash over to Liz Allen's apartment where we see Harry, we see Mark, we see the kids gone because Emma has stolen them. And what does Liz do because she's a billionaire? Of course she had her son microchipped, so they're going to follow this tracer trail down through the streets of New York and try to come up with a location for their children. Of course, Peter is concerned about J. Jonah Jameson. He heard that he was abducted, so he tries to contact him, and J. Jonah Jameson admits his faults, that he accidentally let slip, that he allowed Norman Osborn to put the pieces together, which immediately disconnects the call between Peter and J. Jonah. This makes for some really interesting tension because if I assume correctly, which who knows if I will, I think that J. Jonah Jameson is going to do something drastic at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 800 or 801, which is going to put him in the line of fire and sacrifice himself for Spider-Man. We're going to call that here first. It just seems like something that Dan Slott might do because Dan Slott has some interesting concepts when it comes to death. We find that out on the next page because we have Emma holding these children, making her way through the subway station, trying to find a bus, trying to get out of the city because she wants to run away from Norman Osborn because Norman Osborn is trying to track down the kids. It's all about the legacy. She knows immediately who Norman is, and that the Carnage symbiote is after them, and that Pop, is as Norman calls him, is there. Dad, what have you done? Comes from Harry, and Mark knows exactly what Norman's thinking, and he knows exactly what he's done. It's all about that, and what Norman Osborn reveals as he interacts with all these individuals is that Grandma's home. So Harry, unbeknownst to him, hired a sitter or a nanny that actually ends up being his long-lost mom back from the dead. While this is going on, the Clash has tracked down Norman Osborn. A Human Torch arrives, and they're about to hit him with a combination. They use the sonic rays, they use the fire, and then there's nothing that happens. There's no effect. The Red Goblin, it seems that the Green Goblin serum has empowered the symbiote. What once was a weakness, now no more. And everything's fair game at this point in time. Speared with different pieces of the Carnage symbiote turned into blades. Cindy and Miles jump in. They're trying to engage him. There's a giant brawl, a fight. And unfortunately, these guys are ill-equipped. Spider-Man and Silk, they're just not meant to go toe-to-toe with the Red Goblin, especially in their current iteration. And that leaves Flash Thompson to jump into the scene. And when he touches the Red Goblin, he's using his anti-venom. The anti-venom causes the Carnage symbiote to burn around Norman Osborn. But is it enough? Does he have enough power? Can he exert enough control over it? No, the Red Goblin just slashes through him, blood coursing from his wounds. The other people, the other help that Spider-Man is called, they are fading fast. Clash, Miles, Cindy Moon, Johnny Storm, those guys, they need Flash's help more than he needs to defeat the Red Goblin right now. So he exerts every last bit of energy, every bit of blood that he's expending at the hands of the Red Goblin. He's using his energy to save those people that need saving. And it's just a representation of the kind of violence and insanity that Norman Osborn has. All his mission is to save the lives of others, putting himself on the line and leaving himself vulnerable, and the anti-venom symbiote slips from his body, leaving him exposed as Norman realizes that the family has escaped. The kids are gone. So he leaps into action, heading after him. Spider-Man soon arrives on the scene, and Flash reaches out to him, grabs his leg, and heals the wounds that were left by the Carnage symbiote. Gets the star player off the bench and back into the fight. So that leaves Norman hunting down his family, and he leaps into the fray, grabbing Norman Osborn Jr., puts a hand onto his face, and slowly but surely the Carnage symbiote overtakes him, creating a younger, more impish-looking version of the Red Goblin that mirrors Grandpa Norman himself. And that's where we conclude with Amazing Spider-Man 799, which is going to lead into 800 and 801. So while the saga of the Red Goblin is most likely going to be concluded over the next 2 issues, there are some lasting effects that should be happening, or at least enough to carry us through into 801. We haven't had any kind of big death, no real serious consequences. We have a new player on the field, a child that's been possessed by this Red Goblin symbiote and being used as a tool by his grandfather. We have the return of Harry Osborn's long dead mother, the wife of Norman Osborn, and that's going to lead us into 800 and 801. So if we're talking about predictions, what I'm predicting, of course, Red Goblin's going to go down by 801. We're going to have Emma possibly reconnecting with her son in a really positive way, and we're going to have somebody like J. Jonah Jameson sacrificing himself in order to save the day, in order to support Spider-Man and make sure that everything's taken care of. However, I'm not sure what kind of impact this is going to have on the Ryan Ottley, Nick Spencer run, which is starting in July. That is the big toss-up. Like, is this something that's going to create consequences, or is it not really going to have any? Do they need to set the stage for where this new series is going to take off? That is the question that I'm asking, and that's the question you guys should be asking. So let's have a conversation down in the comments. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.